Welcome to Universal Man. My name is Mark Weppett. I'm here to help you unleash your apex potential. And today I want to be talking about 7 ways that you can naturally stimulate the release of dopamine. It's always so much easier to do good things when you feel like doing them, right? And that's what dopamine does. It makes you feel like doing things. It's that motivational neurochemical that fills you with a sensation of desire, anticipation, the idea that you're moving toward a good goal. And if we can get this pointed at good things like habits, goals, and that kind of stuff, well, then it makes it so much easier to move in that direction. And so that's what we're going to be covering today. 7 ways in which you can get your mental juices flowing in a way that serves you. All right, tip number 1. Tip number 1 is kind of a boring one, but I feel like I have to put it in here, and that is to get healthy. All right, if you are like living a very unhealthy lifestyle, you're eating like junk food constantly, you're always staying up late, you are, you never move, you never exercise, that kind of stuff, you're just naturally not going to want to step outside of your comfort zone. I mean, you're going to be pretty sedentary. You're going to be pretty much like locked into your little prison of comfort, and your dopamine is only going to be tied to those comfortable things, which likely are not the things that you want to keep doing, right? And so cleaning up your health will do a lot for making your brain want healthier things. And if you're going to pick any one of these to focus on, like if you're kind of in a pit, you really just are not very healthy, you're not very disciplined, that sort of thing, then probably the number one thing I would focus on is getting better sleep. Just go to bed earlier. Stop staying up so late, because the sleep aspect is pretty big. That does a lot for keeping your brain healthy and recharged, which will then give you the foothold you need to start making progress in other things. But then, even if you just start walking, you just start eating a few more whole foods, start drinking some more water instead of soda. These kinds of simple things will make you feel better about yourself, and make it easier to get motivated in other directions. Tip number 2, we move into the neurochemical health, where things get more interesting. And the tip number 2 is dopamine detoxing. If you've been a fan of this channel for a while, then you know I talk about this a lot. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time here going over this one, but the basic idea is that you need to kind of starve your brain of crappy dopamine sources if you want it to produce dopamine for other things. So, think about it this way. It's like if you're constantly stimulating your brain with, hardcore porn, video games, Netflix, social media, like these things that are just like super easy, high stimulation things, well then like your brain's gonna not even be able to register the more subtler pleasures in life. Your brain's not gonna react to it. So stuff like doing chores, working toward goals, that's all gonna feel kind of like, I don't want to do that. That sucks, right? It's like if you're outside staring at the sun and then you walked inside, like you wouldn't be able to see anything really. It's like, especially if it was a dimly lit room, you'd barely be able to see a candle, right? Because your eyes are so overstimulated and constricted. So it's like, that's what we got to do is here. You got to almost get yourself bored. Give yourself the time to resensitize, and you do this by cutting out that highly stimulating stuff. And through that boredom, all of a sudden, things that you never wanted to do before start sounding more interesting, right? And so this is a rather challenging process for a lot of people to go through, especially in the modern day where everybody's so hooked on this kind of stuff. But if you can go through this, then you will be able to really start kicking your motivation into much higher gears and in much better directions. If you want some help with this, make sure you check out my videos on dopamine detoxing, the reset ritual, my 10 commandments of the dopamine detox, all that kind of stuff. I think it'll help you out. Tip number 3 is that you need to have compelling goals. This might sound like an obvious one, but this is something that I see people screw up all the time. Instead of having goals, what people have is just these abstract shoulds in their brain. They're like, I should get in shape. I should be smarter with money. I should take my career more seriously, or something like that. And these don't inspire dopamine. Dopamine is like the anticipation of a reward. These thought processes, they just kind of induce shame and then make you want to like not think about them anymore. Okay? And so you can't do it like that. You have to actually think about something that you want. It seems obvious, but it's really essential. One of the most fundamental things I see people get stuck on is that they don't have a vision and an idea of what they want. And if you don't have that, well, then you're not going to be able to get this battery going, your motivational circuits running, right? You're not going to have any juice in the system. So it's like, if you want to get in shape, stop just thinking about, oh, I'm fat and I want to get in shape. Think about something you want. Like, imagine what you would like to do. Maybe you'd like to be good at Olympic weightlifting. Maybe, you want to get into bodybuilding. Maybe you want to get into martial arts. You want to learn jujitsu. Like, have an idea, a goal that sounds exciting to you, that sounds cool, that sounds interesting, right? And by having something concrete like that, it can do so much for getting you going, because then you have something to aim for, something that will pull you toward it. And so being willing to really dream, being willing to really think, and being able to like have a high level dream of like maybe being totally shredded, but then having short-term goals that like little milestones along the way where it's like, I want to reach this level of weight, or, I want to be able to do a, run a mile. And because maybe you can't run a mile, I'm sticking in the physical realm, but it can be with anything. It's like, maybe you want to be a full-blown, run your own business sort of thing, but maybe right now it's just, I want to have a side hustle, right? So having a progression of these sorts of goals, but having compelling goals, is essential for getting your dopamine going. Because otherwise, if there's no clear end goal that seems like a reward, well, your brain is not going to release the chemical that it uses to drive you toward rewards, right? Now, tip number 4 kind of goes along with this, but takes it a bit further. And this is the idea of having good mental commercials. So you can't just have a good goal. You have to think about that goal in the right way. All right. So like, for example, sticking with the weight, like the fitness goal, you can't just imagine going to the gym and feeling awkward and being weak and having people stare at you and like thinking about how uncomfortable it is to work out and how, much you suck at how much your form sucks or whatever. It's like, if you play that commercial in your brain, how are you going to feel? You're not going to want to do it. Not at all, right? Especially if you're also then playing commercials of, oh, I could watch Netflix, oh, I could eat some sweets, oh, I could do blah, 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 blah. Like, if you're doing stuff like that, like, it's not gonna happen. You gotta be a good advertiser to yourself. And so what you would wanna do instead is, imagine yourself fit, imagine yourself getting stronger, imagine yourself like, making connections at the gym, making friends, right? Imagine like where you're headed. You gotta paint that compelling vision. And if you don't do this, well, it's just, your brain's not gonna wanna do it, right? It's obvious, but people don't do these obvious things. Like, if you want to work on a business, you want to build a business, if you just get yourself defeated before you even start, you just imagine, most new businesses fail. I don't know exactly what I'm doing. Or, this person failed, and so I'll probably fail. Or, I've failed in the past, blah, blah, blah. If you're playing these kinds of thoughts in your brain, you're painting these kinds of pictures, you're not going to want to do it. You have to see the opportunity for success. You have to see yourself succeeding. You have to see yourself thriving and enjoying the process. Paint a good picture, all right? And if you can do that, well, then your brain is going to give you the juice. It's going to give you the dopamine. Now, this gets a little bit tricky when you are running into hardship, when you are running into setback, right? And this is really all about mindset at this point. And what I would offer you guys is to check out the link in the description below and get my Anabolic Optimism Guide. This is a full-blown mindset guide that's designed to be the most resilient mindset, like, actually possible. And it's a bit intense, like if you are a bit of a weak-willed weenie sort of person, like you don't want to actually be bold and that sort of stuff, then this will not work for you. So it's not for you. But for the people who have a little bit more audacity in them, who are willing to take on a new perspective on life, the fundamental idea is that everything that happens to you is the best possible thing that could ever happen to you. Sounds like a bit of a challenge there, right? And might even say that's impossible. You can't do that. Think of all the bad things in the world. Well, just check out the guide, and if you still got beef with it, then let me know. But I think it could really help you out. A number of guys have told me that it has absolutely changed their life. And so if you can adopt that kind of mindset, then you will always be able to paint useful commercials in your brain, no matter how difficult the situation that you're facing is. All right, on to tip number 5 for how to naturally stimulate the release of dopamine and get motivated. All right, what we're going to be talking about in this one is to just get started. Sometimes you're just not going to get the dopamine ahead of time. Sometimes you need to actually push through an initial resistance, and then your brain will get motivated. All right, many of us know this. It's like, we make a big deal about starting that project, but once you actually sit down and start, it's not a big deal, right? And so you can really come to rely on this process and use it well, because when you know that that's what's going to happen, it's not that big of a deal. Because, before you start, there's this sensation of resistance. And if you're kind of unexperienced with this, you imagine, well, then it's just going to keep feeling like this. And it doesn't, right? It's kind of like, imagine you are an old-timey ship sailing on the sea, okay? You've got oars and you've got a sail, okay? If the wind is blowing in your direction, awesome. You can just cruise along and you can do fantastically. This is like when you've got natural motivation that just flows through you and takes you in the right place. Sometimes the wind is flowing in the opposite direction. Now, believe it or not, if you're a skilled sailor and you have the right kind of ship, you can actually still sail in the direction you want to go, even if the wind's blowing against you. Okay, that would be a example of people who have high levels of mindset, skill, and discipline, that kind of thing. But then, what if there's no wind? What if you just kind of feel flat? What if it's just like flat resistance? There's nothing really there, nothing to help you with. Well, at that point, you kind of got to break out the oars, right? That's your only option, and you gotta row until you find a slipstream, until you find a current, right? And that's what I'm talking about here. Is that sometimes you just have to start. Sometimes you have to push a little bit to get to that tip, and then you can get going. But what ends up happening is, as you learn to rely on that push itself becomes its own source of dopamine. Like that tipping point itself, you're looking forward to that. You're like, I know right on the other side of this little bit of effort is a state of flow, okay? And just knowing that that's there, that will release dopamine. That will actually start getting you a bit anticipatory. That'll actually give you the juice you need to get going. So, it can be as simple as telling yourself, I'm going to write my book, but you know what? I really don't feel like doing it right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sit down, I'm going to write one word. And then if I write one word and I want to stop, I can stop. But usually you're not going to want to. Once you write one word, you're going to want to write more. You could say, if you want to be less extreme, you say, I'm going to write for 5 minutes. And if I want to stop after 5 minutes, I can stop. But otherwise, I'm going to keep going. You can do this to everything. It's like, all right, well, I don't feel like going to the gym, but I'm going to put my gym clothes on. If I don't want to go at that point, then I don't have to. Chances are you're going to go. So learning how to just get started is a really, really powerful thing. All right, on to tip number 6. And this one's useful because all the prior ones we were talking about here, I guess except for the health one, is that it requires you to have clarity about what you want, right? You need to have a direction. You need to have some sort of understanding of where you're headed so that, that reward or that thing that you're aiming for can get you motivated. But that's not the only way to get dopamine. And this is essential because a lot of times we don't know what we want to do, right? A lot of times we don't have clarity around what our goals are. We don't know which direction we're supposed to be heading. We don't even know what outcomes we can anticipate. And so at this point, what we have to rely on are questions, because our brain loves to have questions answered. That's one of the big things. If you can ask, if you're lacking compelling goals, well, then you need compelling questions. Right? If you lack compelling clarity, you need to get yourself curious by asking yourself good questions that you want to answer. And so, I've seen this and used this in many, many, many different areas of my life, and I've helped clients do the same thing. Like back when I was really stuck in a bad pattern of porn, video games, and escapism and avoiding my life or whatever, it's like I had tried, so many times to get my life in order, but I'd always stop as soon as it got uncomfortable. And at some point I just got so sick of that lifestyle, so bored of it, that I was like, I wonder how bad it's going to hurt if I just kept going. Would it really be that bad? I just got curious. I was like, is it really going to kill me? I was more curious than even motivated at that point. I just wanted to see what the heck was going to happen to me. I use this all the time with creating content. It's like if I don't want to sit down and write content, then I just basically ask myself questions until I find one that's kind of juicy. It's like, I wonder what is that? I wonder what are 7 ways to naturally stimulate dopamine. And I just start brainstorming. I start thinking. And it's like once I can get a good question, then I know that I'm going to have a flow state in front of me that I'll be able to put to productive use. And so if you can learn how to ask yourself good questions, learn how to stimulate your own curiosity, well, then you're never going to run out of motivation. So if you want help with your questions, if you want help figuring out how to do questions properly so that you can keep your mind engaged and focused and moving through uncertainty and that sort of thing, then you want to check out my workshop that I did for the Universal Man Vanguard. And this one was called How to Create, is the Matrix of Momentum. And it's about how to create constant states of momentum and flow and dopamine alignment without clarity. Because that's when we all flop and, we all get stuck and we all feel like we can't do anything and we get demotivated or whatever, is because we lack clarity. Well, I've created a process that I call tracking that allows you to move through this through using a series of questions and answers to move through these mental gates that you've got. And so if you want to learn how to do that, then make sure you check out the Universal Man Vanguard and get on the elite tier and check out the previous workshops that we've done. I think this one is a really, really interesting one, and it can really help you out a lot. All right, our final key for releasing dopamine in a natural way is social connection. Okay, there are only so much of your brain is designed towards social interaction because we are social creatures. It only makes sense that a big chunk of your neurochemical power is tied to whether or not you're connecting with other people and the way in which you're connecting to other people. This is a big part of why I created the Universal Man Vanguard. The community around all this kind of stuff is so that people could go there for that easy, low-hanging neurochemical fruit. They could go there and they could get the boost because it boosts you up in many different ways. Like accountability, people, when they think about accountability, they mostly think about, you don't want to embarrass yourself. You don't want to disappoint someone. And that's not dopamine. That's more cortisol and whatnot. And yes, it does, have an element of that, and that can actually be useful. But people actually get hyped to share their successes, to share their wins, right? When you're doing well, it feels good to share that. It feels good to let other people know and to have them celebrate you, to have them be pumped for you, right? I see guys sharing this kind of stuff all the time on Discord. I have guys coming in every week on the calls telling me about their wins. It's exciting. There's a success thread where guys post, when they hit 90 days free from porn or some other goal or whatever, and people get hyped for them. Of course, that's going to stimulate the feel-good neurochemicals in their brain, right? This is very, very valuable. Further, when you have support and feedback, you can get, it takes a lot of the fear out of it. It takes a lot of sting of the failure out when people can tell you, hey man, I know what you're going through. It's all right. You can get back on the horse. We can do this. Let's just look at what happened and figure out how to make things better next time. When you can take the sting out, that removes fear. And when you remove fear, it makes the goal seem more appealing because it makes this goal seem less dangerous, less risky, more reward, less risk, right? And so, boom. That's a dopamine increase right there. Sometimes it's just the ability to be seen and understood by a peer. I was reading a book called The Practice. It's Seth Godin's, I think, most recent book. It's a very good book for anyone who does any sort of creative work. And he was talking about this one author who was really down on himself because he had been spending 5 years on his book until he met other great writers who were like, my book took me 7 years. Oh yeah, mine took me 8. And instantly 5 years of shame left the dude because he realized, oh, this is normal. I'm all right. I'm accepted. And guess what? He was more motivated then to keep doing his work. He felt more power because someone was able to remove the weight that was keeping him held back, right? And then obviously just better feedback, right? If you've got better processes, better clarity, all that kind of stuff, you have a clear path to what you want, and you get that by your peers, you get that through connection, through seeing what's working with you and other people and all that kind of stuff and sharing, it's going to motivate you more, right? It's simple, right? This is why people hire coaches. This is why people, they want to connect with someone. They want to have someone there because it makes it easier. It makes it more fun. All right. I just got a business coach and I also got a personal trainer, not because I needed them per se, but because I wanted it, because it's better. It's easier. It's more fun. Right. It makes me more motivated to be able to bring someone into those parts of my life. And so if you can figure out some way to do that, to tap into that, well, then you're going to be tapping into a different level of naturally induced motivation. All right, my friends, so that's what I have for you today. If you did like this and you got something out of it, please help the channel out by liking, subscribing, hitting the notification bell, leaving a comment, all that kind of good stuff. You can also check out my Universal Man Vanguard. You can check out my free guides. I've got a lot of stuff for you. I'd love to hear from you. So thank you so much. Ooh, yeah. I'll see you all in the next one.